For a moment, standing outside that reception hall with my hands shaking and my heart somewhere in my throat, I let myself believe that maybe this time would be different. It wasn't. I should have known when my sister didn't return my calls for 3 weeks leading up to her engagement party. I told myself she was busy. Wedding planning is a lot. I know that. I told myself I was being too sensitive. That's what my family had been telling me my whole life, anyway. You're too sensitive, Jenna. You take everything so personally. My name is Jenna. I'm 31 years old. I'm a licensed structural engineer for a federal infrastructure firm. And for most of my adult life, I have been the person my family calls when they need something: a co-signer, a second opinion, a shoulder, and quietly sidelines when it's time for the spotlight. My sister Paige is 2 years younger than me and has always been the one my parents chose. Not in any dramatic, obvious way, just in the thousand small ways that add up over a lifetime. She got the car for her 16th birthday. I got a handshake and a bus pass. She got a graduation party with a catered dinner and a DJ. I got a card with a $20 bill inside. When Paige graduated with her communications degree and immediately landed a job at her uncle's PR firm, a job she got because my father called in a favor, my mother cried at the dinner table and said, "This is what we worked for." I had graduated the year before with honors from a state engineering program, taken out every loan myself, and accepted a position with a federal contractor. My mother said, "That sounds complicated. Will you have benefits?" I stopped expecting fairness a long time ago. What I didn't stop expecting, what I kept clinging to like an idiot, was basic inclusion. Paige got engaged in October. His name is Drew, and he comes from money, the way some people come from small towns. It's just baked into everything about him. His family has a vineyard in Virginia. His mother wears pearls every single day, not as a statement, just as a fact. His father is the kind of man who shakes your hand and looks past your shoulder at the same time. I found out about the engagement through Instagram. Not a phone call, not a text, a post. She said yes. Shh. With 47 comments from people I've never met and the ring that probably costs more than my annual salary. I called Paige that night. She picked up on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. I saw the news. I said, "Congratulations." "Oh, yeah, thank you." It was so romantic. He took me to this little vineyard in the Blue Ridge and Paige, I kept my voice even. "You didn't tell me." A pause. "I was going to. It's been crazy. It's been 48 hours. Jenna." Her voice shifted into that particular tone, the one that meant she was about to say something that would make me feel small and also somehow make it my fault. "Can you just be happy for me? This is my moment." I was happy for her. That was the thing nobody ever wanted to believe. I genuinely was. I wanted my sister to be loved and chosen and celebrated. I just wanted to exist in the same room while it happened. The engagement party was at my parents' house on a Saturday in November. I drove 2 hours to get there. When I arrived, my mother was arranging a charcuterie board, and my father was in the backyard with Drew's father, laughing at something with their whole chests. The living room had balloon arrangements and framed photos of Paige and Drew on every surface. Not a single photo of anyone else. Drew's family arrived 40 minutes after me. His mother, I'll call her Mrs. Ashford because that's the energy she gave off, walked in like she owned the place and immediately started suggesting where things should be moved. My mother nodded along and moved them. I spent most of that party refilling the chip bowl and answering questions from relatives I only see twice a year. My aunt asked me if I was seeing anyone. My cousin asked if I'd lost weight. Nobody asked about my job. Nobody asked about the bridge retrofit project I'd spent the last 14 months designing, a project that would affect the daily commute of about 80,000 people. On the drive home, I cried for about 20 minutes and then told myself to stop it. The wedding was set for the following June at a country estate an hour outside the city. Paige asked me to be a bridesmaid in March over a group text that also included 3 of her college friends and Drew's cousin. I said yes. Of course I said yes. What followed were 4 months of group chats I was consistently left out of, a bridesmaid dress that was chosen without my input and didn't fit right, and a bachelorette trip to Nashville that got planned while I was on a job site in West Virginia with spotty cell service, and by the time I had signal again, the flights were booked and the house was full. "Sorry. We thought you couldn't come," Paige said. I hadn't said I couldn't come. No one had asked. I kept showing up anyway. I showed up to the dress fitting and smiled. I showed up to the bridal shower and brought a gift, a kitchen appliance from Paige's registry. Something practical, something she'd actually use. Drew's aunt gave her a weekend in the Hamptons. Mrs. Registry Ashford gave her her own mother's china set. My gift was thanked with the same energy as a paper plate being teared from a table. 3 weeks before the wedding, I got the wedding program in the mail. It was beautiful. Ivory cardstock with pressed flowers. The kind of thing that takes real effort. I flipped through it looking for my name. I went through it 3 times. I was not in it. Not listed as a bridesmaid. Not listed as a family member. The program listed the entire wedding party, the officiant, the parents of the bride and groom, the grandparents, the readers, and not once in any capacity did my name appear. I wasn't a printing error. I wasn't a printing error. I called my mother to ask, as calmly as I could manage. It was a space issue, she said. A space issue. The program was already getting long, and Mrs. Ashford felt, Mom, I'm her sister. Silence. It's Paige's day, she said finally. Let's not make this about you. I hung up and sat on my kitchen floor for a while. Not crying, just sitting. There's a particular kind of hurt that goes past tears. It just settles into your bones and makes you very, very still. I thought about not going. I turned that option over in my hands for a full week. I had legitimate reasons. A federal project review scheduled the following Monday. A 4-hour drive each way. A bridesmaid dress that I'd paid for out of pocket and that still didn't fit right at the shoulders. I could send a gift. I could send a card. I could quietly withdraw from an event where I had been quietly made to not exist. But then I thought about something my supervisor had said to me once. During a particularly brutal project review, I'd made a structural call that the senior team was skeptical of. And when I presented my analysis, one of the contractors talked over me for 10 straight minutes like I wasn't in the room. My supervisor said to me afterward, the people who try to make you invisible are always the ones most afraid of what happens when you're seen. I decided to be seen. Here's what most people don't know about me. I've been a volunteer with the Army Corps of Engineers Disaster Response Division for 4 years. It started as a professional development thing, a way to apply my structural expertise in emergency contexts, bridge assessments after floods, building triage after earthquakes. It became something I care about more than almost anything else in my life. 6 months before Paige's wedding, our team had been deployed to a recovery effort in the south after severe flooding. We spent 11 days in the field. On the last day, a section of a temporary gave way while evacuation vehicles were crossing. I was on site. I made the call to redirect load, guided the crew through an emergency re-support operation, and we got everyone out, all 18 people on that crossing. 18. I don't talk about it. I haven't told my family. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because I already know what they would say. That sounds dangerous. Were you being careful? Maybe because I've learned that the things I'm proudest of don't translate in rooms where the only currency is social connection and net worth. What I did not know until she introduced herself at my sister's bridal shower and we ended up talking for 40 minutes near the cheese table was that the state's emergency management coordinator had a daughter who was one of the bridesmaids' college friends. Her name was Bridget and she happened to be Drew's family's neighbor in the Virginia countryside, and she had been briefed extensively on the flooding recovery operation because it had taken place in her jurisdiction. We had never met in the field, but she knew exactly who I was. I wore the bridesmaid dress to the wedding because I had paid for it, and it was technically my assigned role. But I also drove to the venue in my work truck with my field jacket in the back seat and my official Corps of Engineers identification badge clipped to the visor, not for any dramatic reason. Just because I'd come straight from a site visit the day before and hadn't thought to move it. The venue was everything Drew's family would choose. A restored colonial estate with white columns and a circular driveway and grounds that probably had a proper name. I arrived early as instructed to help with setup. When I walked in, the wedding coordinator, a sharp woman with a headset and a clipboard, looked at me, looked at her list and said, "And you are?" "Jenna." "Maid of honors," I stopped. "Bridesmaid." She found my name on a secondary list, the backup list, the list of people you put somewhere so you can say you didn't forget them. "You're not in the program," she said. "I know." She had the grace to look uncomfortable. The ceremony itself was beautiful. I'll say that honestly. The estate grounds were golden in the late afternoon light, and Paige looked genuinely radiant in a way I hadn't seen her look in years, and Drew cried when she came down the aisle, which I did not expect from him, but which made me like him slightly more. I stood where I was placed and held my flowers and felt both completely present and completely peripheral, which is a thing you can get very good at when you've had enough practice. The reception was held in the main hall of the estate. Round tables, candles everywhere, a string quartet for cocktail hour. I found my seat. Also not at the family table, which I had not expected but probably should have, and introduced myself to the strangers around me. They were lovely people. That's the thing. None of this was about the people. It was about a pattern. I was standing near the bar during cocktail hour, talking to one of Drew's college friends about regional infrastructure funding, of all things, when I felt a hand on my arm. It was Bridget. She was in a navy dress and pearls, looking exactly like someone who coordinates emergency response for a living, controlled, warm, quietly authoritative. "I thought that was you," she said. "I had no idea you were related to the bride." "Her sister," I said. Something passed across her face. She had probably been at the bridal shower. She had probably noticed, as observant people tend to notice, the way I'd been treated there. "Come with me," she said. "There are some people I want you to meet." I almost said no. I almost said I was fine right where I was. But I followed her. She walked me across the room to a group near the windows. 3 men and a woman, all in their 50s and 60s, all holding glasses of wine, with the ease of people who have been in formal settings their entire lives. She said my name and the name of the organization I volunteer with, and the words flooding recovery and bridge operation. The woman's expression changed first. "Wait," she said. "You were the engineer on the Callaway Creek crossing?" "Yes, ma'am." She turned to the man beside her. "This is the one I told you about," she said. "This is her." What happened in the next 30 seconds I was not prepared for. The man beside her was a retired Army Corps general. Not volunteer division. Career military. 30 years of service. The kind of background that gets a room quiet when it's mentioned. He set down his wine glass. He straightened. And he said, with complete seriousness, "The work your team did on that crossing saved lives. You made the right call under pressure. That's the hardest thing to do." He extended his hand. "Thank you for your service to this country." I shook his hand. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Thank you, sir. I don't know how many people saw it. I know my mother saw it, because when I glanced over her shoulder, she was standing 20 feet away with her mouth slightly open and a look on her face I had never seen before. Something between confusion and something I might generously call recognition. I know Paige saw it because she was passing by on the way to the bar with 2 of her bridesmaids, and she stopped walking. And for a long moment, she just looked at me. Not with any particular emotion I could read. Just looked. Mrs. Ashford saw it. I know this because she appeared at my elbow approximately 4 minutes later, smiling the smile of a woman recalibrating, and said, "Jenna, I had no idea you were in infrastructure work. Drew's firm actually does a great deal with federal contracts. We should talk." I said, "Of course." I smiled back. I was very polite. I had spent 31 years being very polite in rooms that did not deserve it. But here is the thing I want to be honest about, because this is my story and I'm only telling it once, standing in that room, in that dress that didn't fit right at the shoulders, with that general's handshake still warm in my palm. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. What I felt was tired. The good kind of tired. The kind that comes after something is finally finished. My father found me near the end of the evening after the cake was cut and the dancing had started. He looked older than I remembered. He held a drink in both hands like he needed something to do with them. "I didn't know," he said. "About the bridge. About the rescue." "I waited. You never told us," he said, and I could hear in his voice that he was trying to make this about my omission rather than his absence. "You never asked," I said. "You've never asked, Dad." Not once. He didn't have an answer for that. To his credit, he didn't try to manufacture one. I left at 9:30. Not dramatically. I said goodbye to Paige, hugged her the way you hug someone when you're still hoping something might be different someday, and told her she'd been a beautiful bride. Because she had been. I drove home with the windows down and the radio on a country station I don't usually listen to, and somewhere around the 2 hour mark, with the highway dark and the stars visible and my field jacket folded on the passenger seat, I let myself feel something that I don't think I have a perfect word for. Not happiness, not vindication exactly, not peace yet. Maybe just space. The beginning of it. I've spent my whole life being the person who was quietly removed from the frame, the one who wasn't in the program, the one whose name got left off the list. I used to think the goal was to make them put it back, to make them see me, to earn the space in the room that should have been mine all along. I don't think that anymore. The general didn't need my family's permission to recognize what I had done. Bridget didn't need my mother's introduction to know my name. The work I did on that crossing existed whether or not anyone in my family ever acknowledged it. It was real. It held weight. 18 people drove across it and didn't fall into the water below, and that had nothing to do with whether I was listed in a wedding program. You can't be erased from the record of what you've actually built. A few months after the wedding, I got a call about a new federal project, a significant one, a bridge in the Midwest that had been flagged for critical structural concerns. The kind of project that takes years and a lot of very careful decisions. My name was specifically requested. I took it. Of course I took it. I still talk to Paige, not often, and not the way I used to hope we would. Not with the easy warmth of a closeness that was never really there. But we talk. She texted me last month to say she was pregnant. I sent flowers, the good kind, from a local shop I know she likes. She sent back a voice memo that lasted 4 minutes and included, somewhere in the middle of it, something that might have been the closest she's ever come to an apology. I'll take it. You learn to take what's real and stop waiting for the version you always imagined. The dress is in the back of my closet still. It still doesn't fit right at the shoulders. I keep meaning to donate it to a consignment shop, but every time I think about it, I decide to leave it one more week. Some things you hold on to for a while. That's allowed. What isn't allowed? What I've finally, at 31, given myself permission to stop doing, is making myself smaller so that the people who never chose to see me can feel more comfortable in my presence. I was always in the room. They just weren't looking.